Alright guys, we're back in my garage for another video, and today we have two different DMEs for the 340i. So this is the DME that came in the car when I bought it, and this is the DME that I bought on eBay and got it cloned over at Bimmer ECU Solutions. Now some of you are probably wondering why I needed to get my DME cloned for a 2016 BMW. It's honestly not something that most people need to do, and I definitely wasn't planning on doing it, but unfortunately it seems like I caused an issue and actually even documented it on this channel. So we're going to go ahead and install this DME back into my car. And while I'm installing it, I'll explain a little bit about my story of how I got in this situation and what you guys can do to avoid this issue. Now, as always, for everybody that's new to the channel, I create these videos to help keep you updated on the latest developments in our community, as well as discuss technical topics so that we have a better understanding of how our engines work. So if you're interested in more videos like that, be sure to subscribe because there will be a lot more coming out in the future. So I'm going to carefully put these to the side. And again, I want to give a huge shout out to Bimmer ECU Solutions. Normally those DMEs are like $1,600+, but because of them, I was able to buy a used one for a couple hundred on eBay and send it to them to get cloned. So when I install it in my car, it won't know the difference. It'll be just like reinstalling the original DME. So if you guys have any coding needs, programming updates for modules or things that you need cloned like that, definitely reach out to him and he can hook you guys up. So let's go ahead and hop over to the car and put this new DME in. All right, so let's go ahead and get this DME reinstalled. I should start this off like, well, you're probably wondering how I got here. But no, seriously. So here's the situation. For those of you that don't know, this 340i was not like a good, smart purchase. I didn't go to a dealership and look for one with low miles or anything. I actually bought it from Copart. Basically bought it from a junkyard knowing that it was listed as having an engine issue. And after I bought it, I ended up finding the previous owner, found out the problems the car was having, and it seemed like it was mostly related to oil getting on the spark plugs. So that's why a lot of my videos you guys have seen recently detailed me replacing the valve cover, deleting the PCV system, blocking off my head ports, all that stuff. So I was basically just trying to fix that issue and make sure absolutely no oil could get on the spark plugs anymore. So after doing all that, I drove the car for a while, but I started having an issue. Like, I've driven a couple hundred miles on the car, but I had this issue where if I flashed stage 2, the car would misfire. If I was running it on the stock tune, it would run fine. And it really just didn't make any sense. I knew that the car was running well when I got the car, even though I suspected the engine was fine. I went through a bunch of tests. I did a compression test. I did a leak down test, all of these different tests to make sure that the engine was healthy and everything passed. So I wasn't really sure what was going on, but it kind of reminded me of an old issue that I had on my Volkswagen where our ignition system just wasn't strong enough for the boost that came with a tune. So you had to upgrade it to something that gave out more energy. And the actual code that my card gave, with all the misfire codes, it also gave one that was like combustion too short or something like that. So again, it was kind of indicating that the ignition system wasn't up to snuff. And I've replaced the spark plugs, I've replaced the coil packs, or I haven't replaced the coil packs, but I moved them around to make sure it wasn't following a coil pack, and that didn't seem to be the issue. And when I replaced the valve cover, I actually replaced this entire ignition harness because when I was replacing the valve cover and checking the injectors and everything, a bunch of the connectors were broken and like damaged. So even though they weren't messing it up before, like it was running okay, I just replaced the whole thing. So I knew the ignition system, everything back to the DME was okay, but it almost seemed like something at the DME was wrong. And I just so happened to look up that code for the combustion period too short on BMW fault.codes. And it shows a lot of the diagnostics that BMW would recommend to techs if they got that code to kind of help them work through the issue. And of course, one of the things that it specifically says is if you do a compression test and you leave the coil packs plugged in, you can potentially damage the DME. Does that look suspicious? Yeah, I did that. And honestly, I don't know if I would say I was being lazy. I was definitely ignorant to that. My biggest concern was, since I was trying to fix the car and I wasn't sure if the car even had a problem, I just didn't want extra codes coming up. And you guys know, every time I disconnect electrical connectors, I like to disconnect the battery to prevent me from having potential electrical issues like this one. But because a compression test requires the engine being able to turn over and turn on, you can't really disconnect the battery before unplugging the coil packs. So in my head, I was being safer, basically leaving the coil packs plugged in, just pulling them out, and having less opportunity for codes to pop up, like extra codes that could distract me from the real problem, or potentially damaging the coil packs in the process of unplugging them. So, first of all, definitely don't do a compression test with the coil packs plugged in, because you might find yourself in a similar situation. I talked about this to Steven at Wedge Performance again. I know you guys have heard me talk to him a lot, or mention him a lot in these videos. Shout out to him for answering a lot of my technical questions. But basically, the DME is sending energy to your coil packs that goes through the spark plugs and actually sparks your ignition. If the coil packs don't have a lead on the spark plug, then that power sent to them kind of goes out of control. Like, it's normally looking for that resistance that the spark plug would add just by being attached to the coil pack. And so when it sends all that energy uncontrolled, it can basically damage the system because it's not seeing a return like it should, or it's not seeing the resistance that it should. So having all 6 coil packs disconnected while I was cranking the engine was sending all that energy to them. Unfortunately, it didn't just damage the coil packs. That would have been a little bit easier on the wallet in some cases, but instead it damaged the DME. So that's my assumption right now. We just replaced it, and now what I'm going to do is go into the car. Somebody else that had a similar issue, they had to flash a tune on it to make sure that the car would actually turn on. So I'm going to reflash MHD, and then we'll go take it for a test drive and see how it runs, and hopefully this fixes my issue. But again, I made that video. I'm going to post a comment on there and pin it so that people that see it in the future recognize what I did wrong and hopefully don't repeat my issue or repeat my error in judgment. But disconnect your coil packs if you're going to do a compression test. Just make sure you do it so that you don't damage the DME or anything else in the electrical system. All right, let's go back and get her done. So getting ready to start the car. Unfortunately, you see that check engine light flashing. It's not going to start. So because I think the car was tuned previously, or whatever the circumstances are for how it got cloned, I'm going to need to unlock it with MHD first, and then we'll try to start it and see how the car drives. All right, so now we flashed the stock file, not stage 0. Don't do that, because I tried stage 0 and realized that didn't work and it's not the same. But when we put it in accessory mode, we see the check engine light isn't flashing anymore. Let's go ahead and start it. Now it works. Now, before I end this video, I do want to make sure I clarify something. This is not a common issue. This is not something that most people need to be worried about. No, you don't need to replace your DME every 60,000 miles. No, this isn't something that's just loom and doom, like getting ready to happen to more B58s. I'm not saying that this is a common issue at all. I'm actually specifically saying that this is a rare issue that I caused myself, and I want to make sure that you guys don't repeat the same mistake that I made. So just to keep things clear and transparent, I know sometimes when I make these videos, people kind of freak out and the internet turns it into something that it's not. And I want to make sure that I address that concern before it gets out of control. Normally, it's something that's very simple. If you're getting that combustion duration code, like combustion cycle too short or whatever, it's almost always a coil pack. So try moving your coil packs around. If it moves to the other cylinder that you moved it to, then you know it's your coil pack, so you can replace it. Pretty much everybody that I know that has gotten a similar code replaced their coil pack and the code went away. Otherwise, you'll replace your spark plugs. If that doesn't work, you can do the injector test that I put in a previous video. If you know your spark plugs are good, your coil packs are good, and your injectors are good, then the only thing you can do is run it back to either the wiring harness or the DME. So that's when it takes, a little more investigation to truly figure that out. All right, guys, I'm just going to jump in here really quick to let you guys know that DME didn't fix the problem. So I think a lot of us have been in this situation from time to time. You see something that could potentially be the issue and you jump on it, fix it, and expect everything to be perfect. In my case, it still was not perfect. So the car drove fine on stock tune, but as soon as it was pushing 15 or 16 PSI, it started breaking up. So I went back to the drawing board, started reevaluating what else I could see in my logs, and I did notice that my AFRs were a little bit wonky. So I went and checked out my O2 sensors and they looked like this. And I don't know about you guys, but I've had cars in the past that maybe ran a little rich or whatever and it caused the exhaust to be really covered in soot. My B58 has never ran like that on an off the shelf or custom tune. So this was something that was what I would consider not typical or not normal. So I'm thinking maybe from the spark plugs being covered in oil and everything else before it was in my ownership, a lot of that was basically making its way down the exhaust and just covering the O2 sensors. So went ahead and replaced both of those. And I also replaced all the ignition coils, which I saw not a lot of indication that they were a problem for my initial testing. Moving them around, I didn't see misfire codes move around or anything like that. I was getting a lot of random misfire codes. But I just figured everything else has been replaced, so I'll put some fresh ones in there just so I know those won't be a problem anymore. And now the car's fine. So the car is currently tuned. I've been able to push it, go wide open throttle, manually shift, all of that good stuff. Been driving the family around, running errands and everything. So at this point, I am considering it fully fixed and we'll just continue to monitor it as we move forward. There are still a couple little things that I want to fix or replace, but the car is drivable, running healthy, not doing any, abnormal engine noises or anything like that. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. And I'll probably make another video in the future talking about the other things as I continue to modify it and just try to bring it up to my standard. But for now, we're basically just going to enjoy it as is, start getting back into some of the testing that I've been planning on doing. I actually identified this issue while I was trying to test parts for another company, so I can get back to doing that, plus some other things that I want to try out and just demonstrate for you guys in future videos. So thank you again for sticking with me for this long. I've had the car for almost a year now, and we're back 100% more or less. So we'll see what the future holds. But yeah, that's it for this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.